Hello, everybody, and welcome, and thank you for joining our first webinar on what will be a series of webinars run by DAPRC in the Australian time zone. So we've got a lot to get through today, so we're going to get started straight away, but just a couple of sort of housekeeping points before we get going. Number one, a copy of the webinar or recording of the webinar will be available for you after the session, shortly after the session, so we'll make sure that's sent out. And at the end of this session, we will have times for questions and answers. So if there's anything that captures your eye or your mind throughout the session, please feel free to note it down and we'll be able to answer those questions as we go through. So over the next 30 or 40 minutes, we've got a lot of information to cover. Information about moving from a data-orientated dashboard to an action-orientated dashboard. And just for a definition, just to set the scene, a data orientation dashboard is traditionally a dashboard that's presenting lots of information to a captive group of people, whereas action-orientated dashboards are dashboards that are designed to basically generate a conversation. They create action. They motivate somebody to do something or change something as a result of what they've seen on the screen. In my own personal opinion, most of the dashboards that I'm seeing created throughout Australia and Asia probably currently fall into the data-orientated dashboards. And that's not a bad thing. It's just where we're at right now. However, as we evolve, as everything evolves, we're going to see more and more of our dashboards moving to be action-orientated dashboards. Now, we've got about 30 or 40 minutes together. However, it will be impossible for us to cover every aspect of what you need to do to move from a data-orientated dashboard to an action-orientated dashboard. So if you'd like to learn more about one or more of the steps, at the end of the session, please feel free to reach out to me or actually reach out to anybody at DAPRC, and we'll be able to make some time to sit with you and your team, look at how you're using dashboards now, but more importantly, help you and guide you to be able to move into action-orientated dashboards. So with that in mind, let's get started and look at step number one. Step number one is not new news. It's about knowing your target audience. And I'm almost 100% certain all of you have actually heard this at some stage throughout your professional life. Whether it's in giving a presentation, whether it's writing a report, whether it's writing even a Word document for people to view. Know your target audience is an absolute critical step. It's probably even more critical when you start to think about your dashboards, particularly if we want to be able to build dashboards that want to have a lasting effect or dashboards that are designed to be action orientated. We need to start thinking about who the users of the dashboard will be, what their roles are within the organization, how do we want, or more importantly, how do they want to use the dashboard to assist them in their everyday business decisions? And then how will that make the dashboard more valuable? One of the key reasons why this is a critical step is because the inclusion of dashboards as a reporting tool for MR specialists means that we, as MR practitioners, are now able to speak to a new group of people. We're actually speaking to new target groups that MR people traditionally didn't get to talk to. Let's go back a couple of years. So traditionally, and even today, MR data or MR information was traditionally delivered to a captive audience. So if you think about that, an MR report would be built or an MR presentation. Key stakeholders who were involved in that particular project were invited to a presentation. And then you or one of your colleagues would actually deliver the presentation to that group. It was a confined audience. The hope is that people who attended that group then took that information and distributed it to other people within the company to make our MR data more valuable. Now let's look at a first generation dashboard. It enabled more users to gather information, but traditionally the way first generation dashboards were built is they were built with lots and lots of data, facts and stats. And facts and stats are really exciting, but they're probably more exciting to the business analysts. So therefore, even though we opened it up a little bit, we still had a restricted audience. However, if you have a look at today's modern day dashboards, and with the inclusion of the ability to be able to build infographics, with the inclusions of icons that can have a bar chart sitting behind it, and with the ability to be able to build in alerts and triggers, MR agencies are now able to speak to a broader group of people. All of a sudden, we're now speaking to new groups of users, people who we haven't traditionally spoken to before. So our role is that we need to be able to link the dashboard information to a task or a specific duty for that user. And each user will have a different one. And trying to understand and know what those are is critical, but it's also a challenge. Particularly if you're an MR agency delivering a dashboard for an enterprise and your contact is the insights team. Trying to get information from the insights team about the different types of users who will be accessing the dashboard and how they might like to use the dashboard can be a challenging conversation. However, if we want to move to action-oriented dashboards, these are the conversations we need to start having with our contacts, educating them on the questions to ask the users and how the dashboard will be used. Our users have grown, and the challenge here with the new users coming in is that not all users have the same likes and dislikes in receiving information. Not all users have the same experience. And it's fair to assume by opening our dashboard up to new users, each one of them has a different background. Some are actually not attracted to data and analytics, and on their behalf, I apologize to you. However, some people are not motivated by data and analytics. Some of our new users may not have the skills or the knowledge or understanding of the project, be able to get the right information if we're delivering it in a traditional way. For other users, it's fair to assume that their main job is not analysing data. Their main job might be about taking action or fixing a situation. And therefore, we need to deliver data differently. However, one thing that they all have in common is that they're about making decisions, and all of our users need information to make the right decisions. So we can see that we are now going to have users who are focused on issues and outcomes, and the design of the pages that are relevant to those will be different to the users of dashboards who are still focused on data and discovery. And again, those pages and the call to action of those pages will be different to, say, a frontline staff who is focused on what is the insight, but equally so, what is the action? What do I need to do differently, or what do I need to deliver to my team for them to do differently to take action from the data? So as you can see, knowing your audience, while it is something that has been drilled into us over and over again, it plays a very critical role as you start to move from a data-oriented dashboard to an action-oriented dashboard. And it will lay the foundation on the pages that we build, the layout of the pages, and the information that goes on those pages that is targeted on the job role of that specific user. Let's look at step number 2, which is all about starting a dialogue with your audience. Now, you'll remember that I said at the start that originally MR information or data was presented through some sort of presentation. It's much easier to have that dialogue when you're presenting. It's harder to have a dialogue when you've got a dashboard. However, it's not impossible to have a dialogue when you've got a dashboard. But it takes some planning and it takes some thinking on how we're going to achieve this. And for some, they would say that this is probably the most important step in moving from a data-oriented dashboard to an action-oriented dashboard. How do we start that dialogue? To understand this a little bit better, let's have a little look at the difference between a live presentation and a dashboard presentation. So as you can see up on the left-hand side here, we've got traditional live presentations where you as the presenter is presenting to an audience. During this time, you there as the presenter are able to have what we would call a high amount of control. The reason you have a high amount of control as a presenter is that you can direct the audience as to the most important pieces of information on that particular page. You as the presenter are able to answer any particular questions that your audience may have. You can highlight if there is a significant difference in the information. You can draw attention to a low sample size and advise that caution should be taken when considering this information. You as the presenter know the project in-depthly, and as such, you can answer any questions that the audience may have right there on the spot. And you will deliver your insights and your knowledge based on your expertise and knowledge of the project throughout the presentation to the audience. So as you can see in a live presentation, you have a high level of control. However, in a live presentation, people suggest that you have a lower level of detail. Now, it's not that you can't deliver the detail, because a PowerPoint presentation or any presentation can have lots of detail in it. However, in a live presentation, you have a restricted amount of time. Your meeting might have been scheduled for 30 minutes to an hour. Maybe you got a 2-hour workshop to present your insights. But either way, you have restrictions on how much time, and that alone restricts the amount of detail that you can actually put in your presentation. It is almost the complete opposite when we think about a dashboard. The level of detail that we can distribute through a dashboard is very high. One page alone on a carefully constructed dashboard through the use of dynamic filters can deliver thousands and thousands of combinations of information. You can build a dashboard that has supporting pages that can have from 20 to 50 to 100 to 200 different slides, all catering to the very needs of every individual audience member. You have a high level of control with your dashboards. However, you're not sitting there side by side with them. You're not able to direct them on what to look at on the slide. You're not able to answer immediate questions, and you're not able to generate insights throughout it. So therefore, in a dashboard environment, our level of control is relatively low. Now, if we think about this in terms of those first generation dashboards that I spoke about, the ones where the dashboard was traditionally delivering just data, a low level of control is not a major concern because our audience were quite skilled. Our business analysts knew how to derive information out of data. They knew where to look. They knew what combinations of variable assessments they might put together to get the right answer. However, when we're bringing in new users who don't have the same knowledge of the project, who don't have the same understanding of data, and are looking for the dashboard to deliver a completely different message, a low level of control is a concern for us. However, we have the ability with planning and with understanding these users and with the use of modern day tools such as infographics and icons and bar charts that sit behind them to be able to direct the user in a similar way that we would through a live presentation. So we can actually start to claw back some control when it comes to dashboards. However, it requires skill and knowledge of how to do that to be able to deliver that story through the dashboard. Let's look at this in a real life example. This particular dashboard here is quite a good dashboard. Let's assume for a minute that we're talking about a retail company that sells clothes. So let's assume that we're talking about a company that sells clothes both online and through stores. Not too dissimilar to how a lot of companies. So as MR practitioners, you're probably looking at this dashboard now and starting to make sense of it through the time that I've spoken to you. You can see that we're measuring sales, we're measuring our media spend, They're actually gathering some information about the share of voice over time. They've complemented the primary data with some secondary data through Google Analytics. They look at the share of mail customers, and then they look at the average order volume, conversion, and traffic. So overall, it's not too bad a dashboard. However, what this dashboard lacks is a little bit of logic and order. What we don't know is these red bar charts here are indicating when we're down on target or down on last year. Let's now compare this particular dashboard, and as we look at it in more detail, we've noticed that we're now down in revenue on the last month. So we would then start to ask ourselves a question as to why we're down. If we now compare this particular dashboard to a storytelling infographic dashboard, we can see a very, very different result. First thing we're going to notice, or we might notice, is that all of a sudden we've introduced icons as a way for the user to quickly understand what we're talking about. In terms of conversion, we're using the shopping trolley with a bar chart behind it to represent the percentage we're at. We've got average order volume shown through a handbag, and we're also using the icons of people. But if we look a little bit deeper at this and at a very quick glance, we've actually got some logic to it. Start here in our middle. Straight away we know we're down on sales. So you can see that by this little red indicator here, what we call a traffic light, it tells us we're down. If you don't have a lot of time available on your hands and you need to quickly understand this information, the very first thing you're going to look at is this. You would very quickly want to understand why and where are we down. At a glance of an eye, you can see we're down on our store revenue. Web store is working okay, but we're down on our revenue. Glance down even further, where are we down? We're down on our conversion. So at a very, very quick glance, through the use of logic, through the use of traffic lights, and through the use of infographic and icons, we have quickly been able to see with relatively little knowledge what's happening in this business. From here, we would make a choice. Depending on your role within the organization, you would then ask further questions of somebody to be able to go and grab that information. Or equally so, we could drill even deeper by clicking on this information or clicking on the conversion and finding out where we're down. So an infographic storytelling dashboard has taken the same information and has laid it out in a logical manner that makes it easier for the user to understand, directs them to the story based on the key KPIs for that company. And remember, the key KPIs were based on traffic, conversion, and average order volume, which leads to revenue, which is supported by our share, our awareness, our media spend, and our share of voice. Each company may have a slightly different set of KPIs and metrics. However, you can see the difference between laying these two pieces out and presenting it slightly differently. The method used for this particular dashboard is what we call the 5 whys. And the 5 whys was a method that was actually initially invented by Toyota to drive quality. Essentially, whenever you are faced with an issue, ask yourself or your colleague 5 times why, and you'll end up with what the real issue is. So the whys is an iterative and interrogative technique used to explore the cause and effect of the relationships that are underlying a particular problem. We can use this same principle when building a dashboard. So cause and effects, or the 5 whys, traditionally starts with hard facts. So let's look at the exact same information that we had presented previously, but we'll apply the 5 whys to it. Now we've laid this one out slightly differently, just to show you the different options of how you could lay a dashboard out. However, the information is exactly the same as what we saw before. Quick reminder, we're a clothing company. We generate income through in-store activity, and we generate income through our online activity. Let's apply the 5 whys to this. So remember what I said, that the 5 whys traditionally starts with a hard fact, often known as the what. In this particular occasion, our bottom line is we're down on revenue. The what doesn't always have to be revenue. The what could be our awareness, either our brand awareness or our advertising awareness. The what could be mentions, or it could be the advertising result. The what can be many different things. On this occasion, we're linking it back to the business and back to what drives that business, which is revenue. So the first question you would ask yourself is, why are we down on revenue? Why has this dropped? And quite easily, you can see that it has dropped through our first why, which is through our in-store activity. At a glance, our second why shows that our conversion rate is down. Here's where it gets really interesting. They say that by the time you get to your third, fourth, and fifth why, consumer data or market research information is generally needed to be able to answer those questions. Our what was revenue. Our first why was where the revenue was down. Our second why was across the key metrics that support this business, which on this occasion was conversion. And our third why is looking at the measures that they measure from consumer data, which on this occasion was product portfolio and the availability of product. For some within the organisation, the first, the second, and the third why might be all they need to know. However, for others, they will continue to drill to the fifth why to get further information. For example, we could click on our little button up here that gives us more detail, where we'll be able to ask the dashboard further questions. We'll be able to understand, is this particular result a gender issue? Is it an age issue? Is it only happening in certain regional areas or locations? All of those whys will be answered by drilling further. And again, it comes down to the roles and the responsibility of the people gathering this information. Let's look at a second example of how this could work and how we can use infographics to be able to tell the story of the data. So this dashboard is actually a pretty good dashboard, and it's a traditional data-orientated dashboard. It delivers information through a series of widgets. It's got information over time, so we're seeing trended results. It's using the traffic light system that we've already spoken about, depicted up here in our little corner. So obviously we're down in sales calls requests. We're going okay on live. We're struggling here in education. Our share of voice is performing quite well, and our website visits are up. So a series of widgets with traffic lights included help the user identify the fields for action. Unfortunately, what this dashboard probably lacks, if we truly want it to be an action-orientated dashboard, is it's not delivering the cause and effect relationship. It's not visualizing the information in a way that the user can link each one of these together. We can equally take this information, and with a little bit of planning and thinking, we can deliver it through infographics. So for example, this dashboard that we're showing here, an infographic version of the same information, could be read from left to right or from right to left, depending on what your role is within the organisation. However, it suggests that the further you get to the right, the more critical the need is to act. As you can see, we've got areas across the top that focuses on our reach, so the amount of people that we're speaking to. Of the people we're speaking to, what is their interest in our product and service? Of those that are interested in our product and service, how many are actually considering us? How many are putting us on their consideration set? From there, we would move to an evaluation where consumers are evaluating whether or not they will make the purchase. And it's at that point that a decision is made. They've made the evaluation and they're now purchasing. So this is a very common marketing and sales funnel. Different organizations may name each of the sections differently. However, if we apply some logic to it, we have to reach our audience. We need our audience to show interest based on the information that we're presenting to them, which is generally advertising or information about our product and our service. Once we've got their interest, we need to drive consideration. At the point of consideration, something will happen depending on whether or not we show they evaluate us and then purchase. This type of dashboard is becoming more and more important because the world is becoming more and more complex. So it's up to us as research practitioners to be able to create logic and drive information out of that. We, as the practitioners, need to be able to support the different users that are coming. And to do that, we have to use the information available to us, and we need to use a storytelling technique to guide these users through the information presented. So step one, in a quick recap, was to know your audience. But remember, know them in-depthly. And that is a challenge when we need our contact to give us that information. Step number two is to guide them. Because you're not there as a presenter, we need to use the tools that are available to us to guide the inexperienced users through the dashboard. And we can do that through layout. We can do that through infographics. We can do that through icons, traffic lights, and the way that our charts are presented. But of course, there's a third step. And the third step is all about the importance of engaging our audience. If I go back to a live presentation, you're able to engage your audience through the use of your cues that you use as a presenter. You may point to a key area on a chart. You may create eye contact with a certain person within the group. You may direct a question to a certain person within the group. But you're creating that level of engagement. However, with a dashboard, we don't have that personal connection. We don't have that emotional contact. But we can to a certain degree. This is especially important if we start to think about customer engagement studies, when we're delivering an experience result, when we're delivering what somebody thought about the interaction they have with our service or our product. When we're delivering that sort of result, we may want to look at bringing some emotion to it. It's also especially useful if we're looking to actually get C-suite buy-in to the process. If we want C-suite to own potential change, then bringing emotion to your dashboard may aid you in actually being able to do this. So again, let's look at an example. This particular dashboard is actually quite a good dashboard. It identifies that there are 3 core areas that are being measured by this group. They measure the bathroom, they measure the bed, and they measure the overall room. Very quickly you can see, in terms of excellence in housekeeping, that we're getting an average score on this particular one of 4.1. Not too bad a result. As we analyse the slide in a little bit more detail, we can quickly see that within our bathroom, we've got 5 different metrics that make up bathroom satisfaction. 2 of the 5 we're performing quite well in. 2 of the 5 we're probably achieving a moderate result. Whereas our wash basin, you can quickly see that we're down. So again, the dashboard is presenting the information to us logically. The dashboard is telling us where we need to focus. So in essence, the dashboard is doing its job. Remember, we are talking about a customer experience dashboard here, and we spoke at the start of this that we might want to look at bringing some more emotion into our dashboard, especially if we want action to be taken, and especially if our recipient of the dashboard is the housekeeper themselves. They may not have a good understanding on how to read these charts. But if we understand our users, which was step number 1, remember, and we know that the housekeepers are going to see this information, we can bring emotion and a bigger or a greater connection or engagement to the dashboard by a couple of key things. Number 1, we've actually brought in a picture of the person. Number 2, we've supported some of the non-performing areas, some of the areas where it's probably not at the level that we want it to be, with some verbatim or some comments. However, we've now gone with a whole of room approach. And as an inexperienced user of information, which you would expect the housekeepers to potentially be, you can quickly see that we have 2 core areas that draw our attention, our wash basin and our basket. Other areas we're performing quite well, which we need to maintain, are highlighted in green. However, the actions or the service areas that we need to arrest are quickly highlighted in red and shown for us to see. Both dashboards are very, very good. However, the one on the right engages the audience a little bit better, especially if the recipient is the person that we want to make the change. And in this case, it's our housekeeping person. Let's look at another example, a pharmacy. Both dashboards are showing similar information. However, our dashboard on the right is going to a new level. All of a sudden, our dashboard on the right is starting to bring a personality or the segment's persona into the dashboard. This bringing real people, real connection to your dashboard is where I feel the future of dashboarding is going to go. All of a sudden, the people receiving the information are able to draw a connection with the user, which on this occasion is broken out by segment. Each segment requires a different need, and each segment is presented slightly differently. But these real-world examples, this bringing the receiver of the information into the real world, again, I stress, is where I think the future of dashboarding will go. We will evolve from just using icons and infographics to bringing real-life experience. And there is nothing stopping us in the future where we will have video footage of consumers discussing and talking about how they're going. This will be coming. So, as a reminder, consider this. The more accessible the information and insights are, the more likely results will be memorable. And the more likely your audience will be to act. As research practitioners, this is the ultimate goal for us. Our value to our customers, to the enterprise, is based on how much they use that information. And we can increase use of the information if we increase accessibility, if we increase memorability, and if we engage the entire audience, and if we can invite new users to the dashboard, all of a sudden the market research data becomes much more engaging and much more valued. And that is a key result for us. That is something that all researchers should be striving to achieve. Again, let's have a look at step number 4. And I cannot believe I'm actually saying this, but you need to go beyond data visualization. You need to expand. We need to look at supporting our primary data. And when I say primary data, I'm referring to what is traditional market research or consumer data. And when you think dashboards, it's fair that you're probably thinking quantitative data. So that would be your primary data. However, we need to look to move past just visualization. We need to look at bringing in qualitative information such as comments, verbatims, recommendations. We may need to support our primary data with other data sources such as sales, media spend, or any other information that is relevant to that particular business. As practitioners, we need to remember that business decisions are not made in isolation. We as market research specialists need to provide the right amount of data, the right amount of information, and the right number of sources for our customers to make the right decision. And that's how we can become a true strategic partner. So look to support your dashboards with the right information, whether it be sales, media spend, or some form of qualitative information. Let's look to incorporate that into our dashboards. Now, I know that I said step number 2 is probably one of the hardest or most critical steps. My own personal opinion is for market research practitioners, this is the most challenging one that we will have. It's about creating supportive habits. And the reason I say that this is the most challenging is because it's out of our control generally. A normal process is that we are engaged by the enterprise to gather information. We provide them a dashboard to enable them to be able to have information that's more accessible and more engaging. However, within that organization is their own culture. And what we want to achieve is we want a culture within that organization that is of sharing information, a culture that is of supporting and distributing information both horizontally and vertically within the organization. And that's why I say it's the most challenging, because it's hard for you to influence that if you're a market research practitioner. Easier if you're the insights manager. However, without diminishing how important it is, a couple of things to consider here. Our goal is to create birds and silence hippos. Please don't go to any enterprise and say, hey, this guy Heath said we have to silence the hippos, those highest paid persons and their opinions. We're not saying that, but we want birds, which is about business intelligence related decisions, as opposed to just individual persons' opinions. And as I said, this is probably the most challenging one for us to achieve, because we need to create a level of transparency that allows information exchange across the entire audience and bring out to bridge that gap. Remember the 5 whys when building your pages and understand your audience. To quickly summarize what we've spoken about today, first and foremost, the key for us is to provide the right information to the right audience. And that means we need to ask some questions up front. Who is the intended receiver of this information? How do we expect that they will use it? How do we want them to use it? And should we invite more people? What are their roles and what are their responsibilities? Number 2, we need to enable insights and we need to guide our users based on storytelling infographics. The only way we can guide is if we truly understand their business and what is truly important to that business. For the examples that I gave you, it was revenue. However, depending on the data that you're gathering, the importance may be a different metric, but each metric has a story. We just need to find out what that is and then guide our users by using the tools that are available to us. Bring the information to life and encourage impact. And above else, make the change happen. You can help your clients move from a data-driven dashboard to an action-orientated dashboard if we ask the right questions and if we do the right planning. However, it won't happen if we don't consider these steps as we go through the process. Hopefully, you got at least 1 or 2 pieces of information out of today's session. And remember that good visual communication should be used not just to produce answers, but it should generate better conversations. And if data is generating conversations, then again, I stress that we have people using the information. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.